Hi, Katy.
Hello, lovely to be here today, Iwonka.
Hi, I'm so glad to have you. I would like to introduce Katy Carr to our audience today. Katy, you are an award-winning British recording artist with Polish roots, and you performed your music with a group called Aviators. And you also are much more involved than an average singer in Polish history and defending Polish good name. You are, in fact, you are like an ambassador for Poland, artistically speaking. You have issued fantastic 3 albums now, which are very much rooted deep into Polish history. So maybe you, because I know you are very passionate about them, maybe you can introduce what these albums were and when did you actually recorded them?
So it's lovely to be here for Polish Heritage Days. I'm really excited and thank you so much for that lovely introduction. Yes, I'm a songwriter and I've written over 50 songs about Polish Second World War experience. The first one was Paszport, that was released in 2012. So next year will be the 10th anniversary of this album. And then the next one I released was Polonia, and the third one recently is Providence. And this trilogy of albums are dedicated to the freedom fighters of Poland and the amazing effort that they gave during the Second World War and the contribution that Polish people made to world peace during the very turbulent years during the Second World War. And obviously afterwards, their story was completely forgotten due to the brutal regime of the totalitarian communist government post Second World War. So I have met many, many exciting people in my journey across Poland and across Polonia. And it's always a great inspiration for me to meet and hear about new people or Polish patriots that are untold. Their stories are untold and unknown to the general diaspora here in Great Britain or in Poland. So I'm excited and very delighted to share with you my trilogy of albums. And there's lots and lots of incredible characters that I've written about, including General Maciek, General Elżbieta Zawadzka, Kazimierz Piechowski, my greatest muse in Poland, who escaped from Auschwitz in 1942, Pilecki, lots of incredible female freedom fighters, Krystyna Skarbek, and thank you so much for having me today.
Well, thank you. We are very, very impressed by your incredible passion about Poland, and you are our treasure. You're a treasure for all the people who live here, not only Polish, but also British of Polish origin, like yourself and like my husband as well, and many, many others who were born here. And my son, the latest generation of Poles in Britain. So I also would like to say that you were recognized as a big contributor to Polish culture, and you were also awarded a Pro Patria medal for your humanitarian work and also your musical work. Congratulations. You also were a patron to the Polish Army, Home Army Resistance Memorial at the foot of the King's Castle in Krakow, in Kraków in Polish. So congratulations on that. I think it's also a very, very interesting, and I would like to applaud you this work. It's fantastic.
It's a complete honor for me, especially with my own Polish roots. My grandfather was a prisoner in Auschwitz. He escaped. He was number 22661. I'm very proud to be here because if my grandfather hadn't escaped Auschwitz, I wouldn't be here. And my grandmother hid Polish partisans in her house just outside, and she hid my grandfather for the years of the war. And where they lived actually was where the SS men took holidays per year, so it was a very dangerous place. And I think some of the work that I do is also quite risk-taking, because a lot of these topics have not been touched and were silenced by the brutal totalitarian communist regime post-Second World War. And this silenced a lot of the history that needs to be told and needs to resurface, because people need to know how incredible Poland's contribution was during the Second World War and post-Second World War.
Thank you. I think you are absolutely right. We had no chance to talk about honest Polish history for about 80 years when Poland was under communism, and all the good people, like you mentioned, you know, and obviously Pilecki, one of the most famous and well-known today, but also many others. You know, they were silenced by the Soviets. So we had this opportunity now to actually come out and talk to the Polish people in Poland, but also the people who are already born here, about Polish events. And the biggest Polish event, which we're going to celebrate today, is the 3rd of May Polish Constitution, which is the 230th anniversary of that first European constitution. We have incredible pride to celebrate it with all the other Polish people within Britain and out. So maybe, as you know, the constitution was born over a few years, but it finalized in 1791. And it was the first modern constitution that gave freedom to peasants, for example, and recognized the rights of peasants. They also established the right to people who wanted to basically spoil the Polish democracy by banning liberum veto. And this was the major two achievements, I would say, to the constitution. There were many others. We're not going to discuss this now, but I think the point I'm making is that it was very modern constitution for that time. And that was the first constitution in Europe, and it was the only second in the world after the United States, that constitution, which was 4 years younger. So I have a question to you then about how important it is, do you think, in your opinion, to celebrate it today? It was 230 years ago, but, you know, should we or should we not celebrate it?
Well, I think it's incredibly important to celebrate something like this because it was the first constitution in Europe, and Poland was a very forward-thinking country, Commonwealth at the time. It was the largest landmass Commonwealth in Europe, and spanned across the whole of Poland and into Lithuania, because it was the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. And I think if anybody believes in freedom and liberty and the ability for people to have freedom, then this is something that is really important to celebrate, because it didn't just mean freedom for Polish people, but it helped this constitution and the way Poland was set up by then. Many refugees from all over Europe had settled in Poland and were free to live in peace. The largest Jewry in the whole of Europe lived in Poland because of the way Poland had been set up. 50,000 Scots were saved from brutalization and settled near the Poznan area of Poland. There were lots of freedom for instance, I believe that the first freedom for homosexuals to live safely in Poland was due to the ways Poland had been set up. So I think anybody who really cares about this particular side of legislation and pursuit of liberty should be interested in what Poland had to offer during the 16th and 17th centuries. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much for that. It's a I'm very impressed by your knowledge and insight into that constitution times. Yes, this is very much about the point about the being modern constitution. And unfortunately, at that time, our neighbors, as you mentioned, um, were very angry with Poland trying to modernize itself. And this is when we had the partitions. So the King Frederick William II of Prussia alliance with Katrina the Great, unfortunately, didn't bring Poland much luck. And we disappeared off the planet, or at least off the map, for over 100 years. We, even though, you know, it was 230 years ago, I believe very strongly in celebrating and also showing the history to young people, because they are the people who are living in the electronic age. We know they have may have different influences, but the problem I think with we have is that the people, young people, don't want to listen about anything about the history anymore. Don't you agree? I think that's my feeling. Maybe you have different opinion, but what do you think?
I think history is something that is so important for all of us, because we can only learn from the past of how to go forward in the future. And, you know, certainly the idea that Poland was occupied and split into three between 1795 to 1918 is a big point in history that hasn't really been realized properly by people living outside Poland. A lot of people don't understand that Poland was erased from the map of Europe for this time, and actually it became partitioned into three between Russia, Prussia and the Austro-Hungarian empires. And you know, certainly when you go to Poland, you can see the remnants of that in those different partitions. For instance, if you go to Krakow, you can find Austro-Hungarian remnants of architecture there if you want to. But it was a very, very difficult time for the Polish diaspora, because the Polish language had been forbidden. The only time you could speak it was in the Polish church. So if there were any rebellions that were going to take place, this would normally happen in the Polish church. A lot of people don't understand the relationship Poland has with the church, and that it isn't just a religious institution for many people, but it is a place of rebellion. So yes, that history is really important, because if you know, like St. John Paul II said, or like Marcus Garvey talked about his quote, for instance, you know, a country that does not know its history does not know its roots. Both people said it in different ways, but yes, this is really important, that in order to learn about the future, we have to remember the past.
Well, wonderful motto to this, quoting John Paul II. Absolutely agree on that. And coming to my third question, because you know, many Polish people, you are born here in London or in the UK, and you are a generation of young people who came to live here with a Polish heritage. You know, British people also who have interest in Poland. So you certainly must have heard about Sue Ryder, who is a patron of Polish Sue. And what do you think about the being British, like Polish Sue, like Sue Ryder was? Would British people also can be considered Polish patriots? And especially Sue Ryder, because that's my hero.
Heroine, yes, she was an incredible Polish patriot, and yes, of course, some of the greatest patriots and patriots of Poland or live actually outside Poland. I mean, you can look at the great figures of Polish history, including Kościuszko. The great Polish patriots, including myself, live potentially outside Poland. And a lot were exiled. You have to look in the musical community towards Frédéric Chopin, who was born outside Warsaw. And so, of course, yes, anyone could be a patriot to Poland who lived outside Poland. And that's something that I'm very proud of, because I didn't really know about Polish history until I met Kazimierz Piechowski, and he escaped from Auschwitz in 1942. he taught me the meaning of patriotism. He almost injected his patriotism, Polish patriotism, into me, and helped me to understand that these figures really need to be written about and need to be remembered. And of course, you know, talking about Sue Ryder definitely came into our conversations. And I'm very proud to have the opportunity to talk about her, because she's very little known about, it's very little known in England about her activities in Poland after the Second World War and during the Second World War. So I think this is a fantastic opportunity to celebrate her achievement and her contribution to the world of humanity, and understanding what it meant to stand up to such a brutal regime post Second World War.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate your wonderful view, and I think that it's really great to have you. I've got this leaflet on Sue Ryder I must show you, which I am looking at right now. And as you mentioned, a lot of people actually do not know what she has done. We, with Polish Sue, are trying to get a little bit more information about her values, especially in terms of working for Poland. Basically, since the 50s, when she came and set up her foundation in Poland, she's opened about 30 of care homes in Poland. And she was very much working with people who were disadvantaged, ill children, people who had cancers, older people who were, you know, disadvantaged after the war. She was working very much with prisoners of war that came after, you know, after the war as prisoners from the German concentration camps. And she was doing incredible work on behalf of Polish people, including the work that she's done for Poland during the martial law in Poland, when she brought this subject of Poland to the British Parliament, and was always very much lobbying on behalf of Polish people to be, you know, anti-communist, putting the anti-communist messages also to save Polish people from potential war, etc. So she's done extremely well, and she only managed to actually register her foundation after the communism, because during communist times in the PRL, so the Polish Republic of People, Sue Ryder, she was not able to actually officially register this. So she only registered in 1991. But I really would like to thank you for mentioning her, and I'm very proud to be able to work, let's say, in her name, or as a patron of having her as a patron of Polish Sue, because I think that she was absolutely remarkable woman. So I would like to just summarize by saying that we all understand that history is very important. The Constitution of the 3rd of May, 1791, that we celebrate 230th anniversary today, was one of the most important parliamentary acts in Poland. It's still valid. It was the first modern constitution, and we should celebrate this occasion in Poland, but also outside of Poland when we can, you know, with people like yourself being a Polish ambassador for Poland culturally and in any other historical way. It's fantastic. Well, thank you very much for your input today.
Well, I'm just delighted to be here, because my work is really about bringing together British and Polish people, and it's also celebrating the friendship that has been built up between Great Britain and Poland. And there are lots of amazing patriots here in Great Britain. Sir Edward Elgar was even a patriot of Poland. He created a fund to help the victims of the oppressed Polish people during the First World War. Actually, in 1915, he created a piece called Polonia, and Ignacy Paderewski, later Prime Minister of Poland, was involved in that. And I do think that someone like Sue Ryder really her story needs to be told to more people, because She was obviously silenced by the communist regime in Poland, and people need to understand that, you know, to go to Poland during the Polska Republika Ludowa, which is the Polish Republic of Poland during communism, Poland was a very scary place. It was frightening to go there. It wasn't an easy place to live, especially when Stalin was still alive. People were being tortured, people were being sent to Siberia. People have fought for Great Britain during the Second World War and were being thrown into Siberia by the British Uncle Joe, which was Joseph Stalin. It is really frightening to see, still in this day, some people calling Joseph Stalin Uncle Joe. And Churchill was very brave in his speech when he talked about that there is an iron curtain falling upon Europe. I think this is a topic that really demands a greater study. There has been too much silencing on the atrocities of communism and how many people have been affected. Sue Ryder did her very best in a very frightening time. It was very, very scary for a lot of people to even talk about anything. And so for her efforts to be silenced in this day of freedom, in this day of freedom across the internet, of liberal thinking, we hope, across the internet. And this is a perfect opportunity to celebrate somebody who really did go against enemy lines and did deliver projects to help the humanity, to help those Polish people who were terrified of even speaking against the Communist Party because they could be sent to gulags at any moment, or oppressed, or have their whole money taken away from them, or sent into poverty. People were starving in Poland. People didn't have enough food. And contrary to beliefs of current Communist Party members, it was a horrific time there. And it is important to remember the slavery, and everything that Sue Ryder did was contrary to that. She did up and beyond the measure of any human being, really, to go into a place like that and deliver food to the very needy and the poor and the homeless and the people who were the most ill. And so it is just a real honour to be able to talk about her today, and hopefully show people here in Britain and in Poland that her name needs to be remembered for all the incredible contribution she made to both countries post-Second World War. And it's a real honour and a privilege to be here to talk about her. So thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much, Katy. Just as a summary, we talked to Katy Carr, a Polish artist, and today we met during the celebration of 230 years of our Constitution as part of Polish Heritage Days. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, and have a wonderful Constitution Day. And I'm really excited to be here and sharing it with you. What a wonderful event, Iwona. Thank you for having me.